Welcome to the Detailer's Dock, anchoring you in the world of marine detailing. Whether you're a seasoned detailer or just starting out, this is where every detail matters, with your host, Captain Ken Mercer from Marine Detail Supply Company.
Guys, welcome back to the Detailer's Dock. It has been quite some time since we've last released an episode, and your voices have been heard. Like, I've been getting emails and phone calls here at the headquarters going, "Hey guys, like, where's the podcast at?" Like, we enjoy listening to them while we're out sweating, working on boats. And as long as you guys continue to support us and keep pushing us, we'll keep delivering this information. And today we actually have Zach Ranger from Southwest Florida Marine and Auto Detailing. Zach, if I'm not mistaken, you started off as automotive detailing when you first started your business. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And before we really kind of start digging deep on your actual business and how you've really grown in a short time, y'all. So those of you listening, like, you're in for a good treat. Like, Zach has really only been detailing now. Zach, what is it, 2 years?
Yeah, this month actually is November 1st is the second year, that we started this, I started this. It's kind of a
Right.
crazy thing. I mean, you see my trailer, behind me here.
Yep.
I didn't have that at first. I was working out of the bed of my truck, and we kind of quickly grew, but this is, November 1st of this year is officially, year 2 for me. So it's been a really, really great journey, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. It's one of those things to where, just a lot of hard work and perseverance, and just pushing through and got me to where I am at today. So
Perfect. So really where I want to start off is, for me, like, we've had a relationship since you started your business.
yeah,
And
basically since day one.
right. And for me, like, I've seen the growth and how you've grown. And I know a little bit of your back history of what you used to do prior to being a marine and auto detailer, right?
Yeah.
So, which you used to sell cars. You were a car salesman, right?
Yeah, I did that from, it's actually kind of funny, from the age of 18 all the way up to basically right at when I turned 25. It's a big, obviously, apples and oranges, two completely separate different industries.
So you say that. And really where I want to really focus on today is the sales aspect that you brought from the automotive sales, right? The car sales, the
Definitely. Yep.
psychology behind the sale, how you talk to a customer.
Mhm.
Because me personally, outside looking in, I think you do a really great job of having those conversations with customers and able to close the sale. So, I really want to dig in on that side of where I think you're extremely sharp at. What I firmly believe is one of the traits have got you where you are in such a short time.
They
Again,
definitely have, for sure.
yeah. But if you wouldn't mind, so, like, you started off in car sales, and kind of give me like a
Yep.
little backstory of, what brought you into that. And then from there,
Sure.
what really transitioned you or made you transition into making this leap? Because I know
Yeah.
the story, but I think everybody out there would really enjoy the story.
Yeah. So, let's go back to, when I was in high school. We'll go back all the way to there. I am a high school dropout. I got my GED. I graduated when I was 17 years old. And I had a friend that worked at what's called Rack Room Shoes, right? Of all places, a shoe store, right? And there's a reason why I bring that up. And, I was making, I think at the time, I think it was like $13 an hour, or $14 an hour, not a whole lot, barely above minimum wage. And I was working, 25, 30 hours a week, doing, the shoe sales. And I was always, I like talking to people. I
So
like finding out their problems.
were you like Ed Bundy? Wasn't he a shoe salesman?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think I'm showing my age with saying Ed Bundy. For
Yeah.
those of you that
Yeah.
don't know who Ed Bundy is, you might want to check him out.
Yeah,
But
and it's kind of crazy, one of these days, it was when I was actually still 17. So my birthday's in April, and it was March, the month prior to before I turned 18, and I had a gentleman come in right before we closed, and I didn't know who he was at the time or know his name, but he came in and he said, "Hey man, I need a pair of work shoes." And I said, "Okay, no problem." He was dressed pretty nice. He was wearing slacks. Was in a nice button-down shirt. Presentable. Belt, the whole nine. He was wearing a pair of what's called Cole dress shoes, and it's like an athletic dress shoe.
okay,
And I'll never forget it. His name was Jake Spinner. And he came in and said, I need a pair of shoes. These are like 6 months old. I'm always on my feet all day. And I said, perfect. I have those over here. Let me show you to it. Show you the shoes. So get to talking to him, show him like 3 or 4 different pairs. He picks out a pair. He's like, this is the one I want. I'm like, great. Well, just so you know, if you buy the second pair, the second pair is gonna be half off. Do you have a wife? He said, I do. So we went over there and he just happened to know his wife's shoe size. He went over there and picked another pair of shoes out. And I
Hmm.
said, well, do you have any kids? He said, I do. Well, maybe before summer starts, maybe you want to get him a pair of shoes. It's that time of the year. So what ended up happening was the guy bought 8 pairs of shoes, eight pairs total between his kids, his 3 kids, himself, his wife, 8 pairs. And as we're checking out, he says, mind you, I'm still 17. I know I have a beard and all that good stuff. So I look a little bit older than who I am. And he goes and says to me, he says, I had my name tag. He says, Zach, I sell cars. I'm a manager. I'm a general manager at a Ford store. I'd like to see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock in my office. I think you'd be a really great fit. I'd like to offer you a job interview, and I'd like to
Wow.
talk to you a little bit more.
Hmm.
And I was taken back. I'm 17. I didn't tell him I was 17 at the time, but I was 17 at the time. I had no idea what to expect, and I said, "Okay, Jake, that sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to meet with you and see." I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm
Yeah.
17 years old, and
Not many 17-year-olds do, man.
yeah, and
Yeah.
long story short, though, the next morning I went there, and mind you, I was only making like $13 or $14 an hour, working 30 hours a week. That's not a whole lot of money
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things in the world.
Right.
And I go there, and I have a great interview with him for like I think it was like 2 hours. And at the end of the interview, he says, "Listen, I want you to work. I want to start. I want to train you. I have no problem that you don't have any experience. When can you start?" So my next thing was immediately right after I said, well, is it okay that I'm 17? He
Oh
damn near, he
boy.
damn near, he damn near fell out of his chair.
Uh-huh.
And he said, listen, I'm going to make it work. Can I pay you a salary? Right. You ready for this? Can I pay you a salary of $4,000 to learn before you turn 18 for the month of March? And
Uh-huh.
dude, that's where I fell out of my chair.
Well,
I'm
that's a
not even
big
kidding.
jump from a shoes salesman,
Oh,
right?
it so was. It was. He said, I want to pay you a salary of $4,000, $1,000 a week to learn everything about Ford, everything about the F-250 line, the Mustangs,
Hmm.
the Ford Edges, the Escapes, the C-Maxes, the Flexes at the time when they made them. He said, I
Yeah.
want you to learn all these cars inside and out. That way, when someone comes in, how you knew your inventory of selling shoes, you're going to know your inventory of selling cars. My
Yeah.
first month of selling cars there, I sold 18 cars. That was unheard of. I pissed off a lot of the guys that had been there for a while. And it was, from there, I was there for like 2 years and I ended up making a jump over to Honda. I knew some of the other sales guys that ended up moving. It was closer to home. I
Yeah.
was with Honda for a little bit. And then, once that happened, with obviously the economy, I had a great success with selling cars. I would
Yeah.
say my average was 18 to 20 cars a month. What ended up
Which is
being
strong.
absolutely was, and me being a local here and born and raised where I'm at, I know a lot of people. So I took Facebook and social media, I kind of took that and I really, really, before it kind of went viral, like on TikTok and stuff, I would make posts on Facebook that got me into the detailing side of it now, full loop. Is I used to have a Key West. I used to have a Key West center console that on the weekends I used to love fishing off of and I would take care of. And I did all the compounding and polishing and waxing myself. I had no clue of what ceramic coating was or the right process. I had no clue. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on some guys.
Right.
That's actually how I kind of found you guys is, using
Hmm.
your products. And, I did, I didn't work for like a month. My grandma's neighbor called me and said, hey, I want to do my boat. And at the time I didn't work for a month and I'll never forget it. I was watching a National Geographic channel of these guys trying to, stop poachers from it. And my grandma's, stop poachers from killing stuff over there in Africa. And my grandma's neighbor called me and I told him no at first. And then I thought to myself 10 minutes later, I'm like, I haven't worked in a month. I still have all this stuff because he was looking for a boat detailer and he asked who did mine. And I said, "Oh no,
Right.
I do my own stuff. I really can't help you out." 10 minutes later, I'm like, "Man, I'm an idiot. I got my stuff. Why don't I try? Why don't I try this?" And I went over there and gave him a quote for $500. I'll never do that type of pricing again today, but I did. And this boat was super oxidized and needed. I mean, I spent 3 days on it and
Hmm.
I had all the compounds, and I had my DeWalt rotary, which I still have today, and I had my Bauer polisher, and I went over there and I did it. I did the whole boat, and he was absolutely ecstatic. And then he said, "Can you do my car as well?" And again, I needed money, and I said, "Yeah, let's do it." I charged him $100 on a he had an F-250 that he pulled the boat with, and I did that. And then that's what kind of got me into the whole car thing. So at first, I was like, "Oh, boats is hard. I'd rather do cars at first." Then
Right.
I did the automotive side, and like I said, I worked out of the bed of my truck using people's waters, and I quickly realized though that wasn't sustainable. Working out of pack outs and working out of the bed of my truck for my viewpoint of scalability and trying to be efficient at the same time, working out of the bed of my truck wasn't the way to go. So what do? I went and had like, I'm not even kidding. I had like maybe $1,500 to my name. 2 months in, I was able to pay my bills, kind of working week to week, which was stressful.
Yeah.
But I had $15 to my name, and I thought, you know what? I have faith in myself. I'm going to persevere this. And I had just paid rent, and I went and found this trailer. 90 days, owner, the same as cash. And I said to the guy, listen, I can give you $1,000 down right now. What's this whole thing going to cost me? And he ended up giving me the same day as cash, 90 days. So I put that $1,000 down. I spent $4,300 on the sales tax and registration.
So you said you had
Yep.
$1,500 to your name, and you
Yes,
literally just
exactly.
took a risk.
Yep. All right.
So start off from there.
So yeah, so I had $1,500 to my name, and we went in, and I went and found this local guy who did like 90 days. But I like to take that risk,
Wow.
and if you're willing to risk it on me, and he said, yeah, man, let's do it. So that trailer was such a game changer. I immediately went. That's the one. Yep, same
And
one
that's the
behind me.
one
That's
behind you,
old
right?
trusty. It's just a small, 6x12 single axle trailer. That thing has currently two 23
Hmm.
gallon air compressors in it, a 9,500 watt power inverter generator from Harbor Freight, 100 gallons of water as well, 100-gallon water tank, pressure washer, two air hose reels. I mean, a bunch of pack outs. It is loaded to the T. But that's what it takes to get
To
to
get,
get the job done.
gotcha.
One, done right. Secondly, efficiently. That way we can go and do the jobs in an efficient manner for all of our clients. Because I don't just do boats. As you know, I do cars. And how I do my vehicles is
Yeah.
I run a 3-man crew. I got some guys up behind me here. My two main guys behind me. Knocking this Grady White out. But we'll stack like 8 or 9 cars on a Friday. A lot of these customers are a lot of repeat maintenance customers, and we'll start from 7 a.m. It will usually end about 5 p.m., between travel time and everything. And we'll get all those done. And it's the same thing every single time. And then from there, though, it didn't stop. I didn't end at the trailer. Again, so November of 2023 to basically January, is when I got the trailer. So, right.
Yeah.
And then May of
Yep.
2024, I went and got a shop. I went and got a brick and mortar,
Yep.
just by, again, staying at it, working hard. I was able to meet with another local business owner who does epoxy, and he had an open bay, and told him what I did. I asked him flat out, "Do you think that this is going to work coinciding with the other businesses? I need to have at least two boats here at a time. One or two boats if I have boats here, and I need to make sure that I can run an operation here whenever I need to. Because there are times where I'm at the shop until 1 in the morning, as you've seen, on social media. But again, that's what it
Yeah.
takes, and I dumped about $12,000 into the shop. Yeah, I mean, I did epoxy, all new drywall, air conditioning, door insulating the door, all the light fixtures, tool holders. I mean, I went above and beyond. And as I say this, I haven't really at this point in my start to finish, I didn't pay myself. How I paid myself was I paid my bills. I made sure that my truck that's financed, my
Right.
F-150 that I have that's financed. I made sure that didn't get repoed. I made sure that I was able to pay my rent. I was
Yep.
able to pay for chemicals and all that good stuff while working and while making these advancements to get to the point to where I'm at today. I think anyone can really do it if they work hard enough, and anyone that says that they can't do it just simply isn't focused or working hard enough towards that. And they're not pushing the right they're not pushing the right
Right.
things. They're not going out and shaking hands. They're not spending money on advertisements, meaning, you don't have to go run a Google or a Facebook campaign. How about go and spend $60 at your local donut shop that I do and go over to some shops and go be like, hey guys, I just want to introduce myself and drop off some donuts. You know how many garages I've done that to, and
Yeah.
they're just like blown away. Like, this guy just came in and dropped off gourmet donuts for us and my staff, and it's worked. It's just been, just small things you can do that aren't
Hmm.
expensive to really grow your business, and just networking. Just talking to people, be present.
So a lot of great points there. And let's shift towards kind of like how the sales aspect that you learned from the automotive side is transferring over to now the detail side, whether it's an automotive side or a marine. So like, take me through like, how's your initial interaction with a customer like when you
Yeah,
when you first go out and do a quote, and then, kind of discuss with me your approach of how you
sure,
break it down to a customer to essentially, try to close
sure.
on
So
on a sale or on a job.
what I always do is, and this is something that, as a business owner or someone that's maybe just starting out, that you really got to understand is, you got to have your phone on you. First thing is, when you get a phone call, my phone doesn't go past the third ring. You got to answer in my opinion, the first 10 minutes of someone meeting you as a business owner. They've already kind of made that mental decision if they're going to do
Yep.
business with you, whether it's a basic wash or whether it's a full-blown correction and coating like this Grady White here. It doesn't matter. Someone's gonna, that first 10 minutes or 15 minutes of interacting with them are so important. And don't use any slang, or try to be as professional as possible. I can't tell you, when I go out and look at these boats in person, and that's another thing is, you never quote anything over the phone. Every boat's different. Every ownership is different. You could have a brand new boat that's 6 months old. Well, that's not a brand new boat anymore. That's a 6 month. Did you see what I did there? A brand new boat that's 6 months old. That's a 6 month old boat. You don't know if they went and washed it with
Yep.
simple grain or bleach.
Right.
These guys don't know. They'll go and spend $180,000 or $400,000 on a Grady White, and they just don't know how to properly take care of it. And that's our job as a professional, to educate them. And these are things
Yep.
that, like, going
Exactly.
back to when I
Yep.
first meet them, is okay, great. I set up an appointment, a day and time. You have to make sure that you're going to stay on time to that appointment, that you made a promise already. You've already made one promise to that appointment time. So if you told John Smith or John Doe, hey, I'm going to be there Thursday at 2 o'clock, you better be there at 2 o'clock. And if you're going to be late, you need to tell them, like, hey, not a couple minutes prior, like, if you're running late around 12 and you have a job that you're going to spend another hour or two on,
Yep.
hey, Mr. John, Mr. Smith, unfortunately, today's job's taking a little bit longer. I just want to make sure you're in a loop so you're not hanging. I know we had an appointment at 2 o'clock, and I want to respect your time. Keywords, I want to respect your time, because their time is just as important as it is yours. That,
Hmm.
that I want to let you know that I'm running a little bit
Yep.
behind. I'm hoping to be there maybe around 3:30. Is that still going to work for you? And it's just basic communication. That has gotten, or what I've noticed anyway, has gotten me so much further than other guys or other quotes, because
Do you
let's
know
hear it.
why? Do you know why? That is the number one issue
Yes,
for our industry as a whole, whether you're a marine
I
detailer
agree.
or an automotive detailer. I would tell you, I cannot count the amount of time that I've heard somebody land a successful job just because
Yep.
they
Yep.
communicated clearly with the customer and showed
Oh,
up on the
yeah.
time that they promised. I'm telling you, everybody out there
Yeah.
listening, like, you need to take note exactly what Zach is telling you. That is by far the number one reason
Well,
people
guys,
don't
you're
book you.
literally letting
I'm
money fall through your
telling you,
fingers. And guys like me who
it's
answer the phone
crazy.
are scooping it up. I mean, just today, I'm not even kidding you, just today,
Yeah.
before 9 o'clock this morning, I got a phone call at about 8:30 or whatever. It was like 8:30, 8:40. And he said, hey man, I'm local, I'm in Inglewood. I have a 239 Key West I want to get detailed. It's a 2014. I know it needs a little bit more love than I think normal. I have called, and he said, no joke,
Hmm.
I have called 6 other companies, and no one's come out to give me a quote. I said to him, no problem. We're working
Wow.
until 5 on a Grady White today. At about 5, I'll be at my shop by about 5:25, 5:30. I'll be at your house at about 6. How does that sound? He said, dude, that sounds awesome. That's if you could do that, that sounds amazing. But in the same sentence, in that same phone call, I made the joke with him because I've also had that same struggle, like trying to get people for like remodeling for my personal stuff for like my home,
Yeah.
or just a matter of like my lawn guy, going through a
Hmm.
lawn guy, trying to get people just to show up. And I said I related to him. So again, going back to the sales aspect, I was able to relate with him. And now when I go there, I'm hoping that when I go there, he's going to think of me as a buddy because I was able to relate to him. So it's easier in
Yes.
the sales
Yes.
process. Is It's almost
Yes.
like, I don't want to say he doesn't know me because he doesn't, but his guard is now down and he's going to be more comfortable with me with whatever number I say. Obviously,
Yep.
you can't rip his head off. You have to be fair with it within reason. But in the same sentence, it's going to be easier for me to make
Yeah.
the sale and close it. So when I go and look at his boat, yeah.
So let me ask you a question on that, because you're bringing up another great point, and this is what we kind of
Sure.
call the psychology of the sale, right? So I'm sure, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm sure there was a time in your short
Hmm.
span when you were selling cars that you probably sold
Oh,
more
all the
than
time.
one
I did a
to the
lot of
same
leases.
customer.
I did a lot of leases. So I was in the service department.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on that, right? So on that, how easy did the second sale go compared
So
to your
great. That's
first
funny you
initial
say that.
sale?
So I had a guy that leased a Honda Civic LX, a base model, right? And I met him through service one day. He was one of the hardest sales at first, words at first, that I ever had. It took me almost 3 months to sell this guy. Every time he'd come in, he was
Yeah.
always in for something. He was just an older gentleman. He just always wanted to make sure his Honda lease was perfect because he was so worried about his lease being, about getting like at the end, if when you lease a car, if there's any damage, you have to pay for that. Like if there's scratches, nicks, or dings. So he was always in the dealership for something.
Right.
And I'm talking like biweekly. And I would
Right.
always talk to him about his lease. Yeah, I would always talk to him about his Honda Civic lease. It was a silver car. I'll never forget this guy. He was a super good guy. I ended up leasing this guy 6 cars. His payment always stayed the same.
Wow.
But the first, and he always had a new car,
And
and
he
he was
always had a new
always, and
car.
it was just simply like, "Hey man, I took your VIN number." I had, and how we were able to do it was, you pull his payoff with the last four of your socials, and by the third car, I ended up having that unfortunately memorized. I knew his mileage. He never drove a lot,
Yep.
and during my, the 3 years at Honda, he was in and out of a car every like 4 to 6 months. In a new car, I call him and was like, "Hey man, it's time for a new car. I know you only got like 3 or 4 thousand miles on it. Your payment's going to stay the same. It's no money out of pocket. We're going to put you in a brand new car. So if there's any damage on it, don't even worry about it. We'll figure it out." Okay, that sounds great.
So how did you relate that scenario? So
So
how did
just
you
simply
relate
by
that
building
scenario
rapport. So just simply by
to
building
your
rapport.
business now?
Okay,
Right.
so
But to your
for
business
example,
now.
these guys that choose the wax option, every 3 months I'm talking to them. Every 3 months I'm talking to them, making sure, "Hey man, how's the boat?" And that is just simply by having a calendar. So, having a big calendar. So this goes back into organization. So if you have, for example, right before the podcast, I had a guy, his name's Bill. He's got a 243 Sailfish dual console. I did his boat about 5 months ago. I talked to him two
Hmm.
months ago and said, "Hey man, just so you know, it's coming up that time by the end of the year. We got to make sure, I know your boat's in storage." Because again, I take notes on all these customers. We're going to put our boat in storage. We're a snowbird.
Hmm.
We're here for 6 months out of the year. I said to him, "Hey man, I know it's near the end of the year. We're going to probably want to pull that boat and, and put, at least do a light polish and wax on there and maybe a deep clean." He literally called me right before the podcast and said, "Hey man, it's that time. We're coming down. Can you go look at the boat for me? It's undercover out of storage unit, at a storage place. Here's my code. Just go look at it. Call me, FaceTime me, whatever you need to do. Let me know what it needs. Let me know the cost, and let's get it scheduled. So that time when I come down there, one, I know you're going to be busy. My boat's already going to be scheduled, and it's going to be good." So this is someone that I've already done business with. They know I did an excellent job. They left me a 5-star review on
Hmm.
Google. They were super happy from start to finish on the process. I talked to them again after the sale. So I'm not just taking their money and running. Again, I'm building a relationship with these guys, with these clients,
Hmm.
because our job as detailers, if you're in this for the short term and you're just trying to take these people money and run, I got news for you. You're going to be out of business more than you started. Yeah, you're going to be out of business quick.
Quick. Quick.
And these guys, our job as detailers is at this point, and what I like to do for my business anyway, is kind of like boat management, not yacht management. Yacht management is a whole nother thing. Is boat management. Boats under like 42 feet, boats that are trailerable. Why can't you talk to people that are in your area locally? And these are guys that are in this industry that are listening. Hopefully that you have a marine mechanic. Hopefully you have a gel coat guy. Hopefully you have a canvas person. Hopefully you have an upholstery person. Hopefully you have all these
Mm-hmm.
guys. There are these vendors that you trust and that do good work that you can relate to where, hey, Mr. Customer, hey Bill, hey Bill, hey Bill, I
That's
know it's
networking.
time for not only your wax, but let's do an oil change too. So now what I'm doing is I'm their guy for everything on their boat. So now they're always going to come to me as their guy that as
Mm-hmm.
long as I keep doing them a good service and a good
Mm-hmm.
job and I'm fair with them, they're not going to question me on a price. They're never going to question me on what their boat needs. They're going to make sure that their boat's always taken care of. And for me to be able to be trusted
Yep.
with someone's $150,000 investment or $400,000 investment or shit. Sorry, but
Yeah.
I got a boat coming up at the end of the month that's $1.64 million that's going to be coated from top to bottom. I'm going to be managing all the motors, all the oil changes, whatever it needs. The guy said to me, he said, listen, I'm super busy. I want to get on my boat and fish it. And when we're done fishing, I want you just to make sure it's
Yep.
nice, tight, and right, and we're good to go. And that to me, is it going to happen overnight,
Yep.
guys? Hell no. Absolutely not. It's not going to happen overnight. But by you doing a consistent, good job, you're going to meet the right people to get you there. So, and that's been key.
Yeah. And yeah, and you bring up some very valid points of being able to
Yeah.
be the one-stop shop, right? So here's the other benefit is, as you know, that marine mechanic, that gel coat
Oh,
specialist, like
absolutely.
they
One
have
hand washes the
customers
other.
too, right? Then you end up being the guy or gal that gets referred to
Yep.
any detail aspect
Yep.
because you guys are reciprocating business within each other. So that's a great way to
So, yeah.
expand your network.
So,
So great points there. But where I want to go too is like, again, like take me through
mhm.
Zach's process of like he's going to meet a customer that says, my
It's
boat's
always
not that
bad.
bad, and we
Whenever I
always
hear it's
know
not that bad, it's
it's
always
that
bad.
bad,
So what I like
right?
to do is what I like to do
It's always
is,
been,
first obviously set the appointment like I went on before I went on that big tangent. Um, set the set
yeah.
set the
Yeah. No, great,
set the
great points
appointment,
though,
meet
man.
the client,
It's so
be
important.
respectful and be professional, guys. Like for example, I know I'm wearing a marine detail supply hat. That wasn't on purpose. It's a hat I like to wear all the time. I think it goes well with my logo and my shirt, but like make the investment
Yeah.
in stickering up your stuff. Look the part, and wear company shirts. Don't go there with a dirty shirt. So these are basic key things that you should do, already as a business owner, because representation
Yeah.
of yourself is everything. So when I go up and show up to these people's houses, when I go in behind their homes or when I walk through their homes, I'm a complete stranger. I want them to be as comfortable with me as possible. So make sure, again, it sounds silly, but
Hmm.
look, have clean teeth, brush your teeth, wipe, make sure your beard's all combed up, or take your hat and do this, make sure you're all nice and clean
Yeah.
cut. When you go to the dock and you shake their hand, or when you go to the front door and you shake their hand, it's a firm handshake. You shake them in your hand. Don't wear sunglasses, guys. Take those off. That looks. People don't like that, especially these older clients. And if you don't walk through their house,
Hmm.
ask them, hey, am I going to the left side or the right side of the house? Ask them for directions. You're a guest in their home. Be professional. So if you walk around the right side of their
Hmm.
house again, you just talk to them about the boat. For example, today is Tuesday. So actually yesterday, this is yesterday. Right after we were done working at a dealership I take care of on all their used cars that we detailed. We detailed 8 cars. I went over and I scheduled a time. I was there 15 minutes after the time. I communicated that with the customer. Just said, hey, I'm just now packing up. You're close by. I'll be there in about, be there at this time. Super cool with it. And I went there and he told me, I just bought the boat. I just picked the boat up Friday. So he picked the boat up on a Friday. He's having me quote his boat for ceramic coating on a Monday. He spent $180,000 on a 257 Robalo dual console. This boat is nice, right? But again, it's a new boat. So you
Yeah.
understand the industry.
Yeah. Oh
Robalo,
yeah.
these guys finish off on a rotary. So I know that as a professional, this guy has no clue. So what do? I take out my test light. And I walk down the boat with him and I show him. I'm like, you see all these? You see the swirls? We're going to fix this. I don't just go in and say, I'm going to ceramic coat your boat for, blah, 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 whatever the number is. Yeah, said dollar. I'm gonna show
Said
him.
dollar,
I'm
yeah.
gonna show him what's wrong with his boat. I'm gonna educate him. I'm gonna spend about, I spent with this guy about 20 minutes talking to him. I ended up finding out that he used to work for the bomb squad over in California for Hollywood. I'm talking to him. I'm making sure, again, I'm relating to
Nice.
him. And not that I can relate to the bomb squad, but I like to fish personally. I asked him, I said, do you like to fish off this? He's, oh yeah, man, I can't wait. I'm going down to Bass Pro Shop to go get a trolling motor. And I stopped him. I said, oh, well, I have a guy who can install it too. You don't just have to, you don't, because once you go to Bass Pro Shop, they're not going to install it. So what I did there was I just now
Yeah.
took him from spending with a big company from Bass Pro Shop. I was able to refer him to a small local company and driving more business to someone that I know that, yes, has given me jobs before, but I'm able to scratch their back now and support another small business. He's probably gonna spend between lithium batteries. He wants a Tarova, a mini coated Tarova. He's probably gonna spend about $5,000 or $6,000 between install, between parts and labor with this guy. And so
Yeah.
he's already made that mental note,
Right.
like, yep, I'm already gonna go to Bass Pro Shop. So I know now this guy's willing to spend money. He's ready to make an investment in his boat. I talked to him about the process. I talked to him, we're going to go in, we're going to polish out all the swirls, and we're going to wash the boat. Obviously, we're going to decon the boat from whatever, and afterwards, we're going to prep the surface with alcohol, remove whatever oils and waxes that may have been present from the mold wax, from when they're making the boat. We're going to prep the surface, and I said to him flat out, I said, I'm going to probably spend about 2 days or 2.5 days with me and two other guys on this boat. He said a word, literally, he had the exaggeration or the expression like really? Like you're gonna spend that long on my boat? And I said, yeah, this isn't like a quick 4 or 5 hour ordeal. This is an all day, a multi-day process to get done right. That way, when you have your boat, you're gonna get about 2 years worth of protection. And these guys are real numbers. If you tell someone 5 years worth of protection, if you tell them 7 years, I got news for you. When you get that phone call,
There
at
ain't
that
no.
3 year mark or 4 year mark, hell, if you made it that
Mm-hmm.
far in your business, you're going to get a lot of backlash. You're going to get a lot of negative reviews that are going to come in, and you're going to shoot yourself in the foot to get those easy jobs. If you're cutting corners, if you're going in and you're like, oh, this guy bought a new boat, I'm just going to go on and I'm just going to wash it and coat it. I got news for you. You're going to do yourself a disservice, and you're going to do it the right way. And, let's say if you quoted that guy $1,800 for that job, that for that same boat, or $2,000 for that boat, and just get that quick cash and do it in 6 hours or a day's worth of work. Guys, you're messing up the industry for everyone. But two, you're shorting your customer. And three, you're kind of robbing them blind. Do it the right way. That's something that I've told myself, from the beginning, and I've expressed this to you in the shop, do it right or don't do it at all. And I believe that has been a true, true, true testament to get me to where I'm at today. But long story short, I always bring my laptop. This is, again, guys, don't bring out your cell phone and do some numbers on your phone and be like, all right, Mr. Customer, this is how much it's going to cost you to do your boat. That is terrible. Well, we had a thing when I sold cars, it's what's called a pencil. If anyone's bought a brand new car or a used vehicle from a dealership, that piece of paper that has all those fees and sales tax and registration and the sale price of the car, that's called a pencil. But what I like to do is, again, this is free. It's on the app. If you have a MacBook or an iPhone, it's called Numbers. It's a spreadsheet. And you break down, okay, to polish your boat, it's this much. To wash your boat, it's this much. To ceramic coat the boat, it's this much. To polish your motors and to coat it, it's going to be this much. But these are line items that you can, in a project description, that you can put on project 306 Grady White. Project description, medium cut polished with a final polish and surface prep all the surfaces to prep for ceramic coating. However you have to type it up. That's just a summarized version of what I type out. But however you have to type it up on a quote, that way when a client looks at it, they're not just looking at you holding your phone, holding a number. You're never going to close that. The odds of you closing that are like probably, in my opinion, because I used to do that. That's how I've learned this. So I mentioned that. If you talk to 5 guys, you're probably going to close one of them. But if you do it the way that with the computer or an iPad with cellular, or even you could do it on your phone, but it's a little bit harder. So I like to do it on my laptop, and I do this for every single customer. I would say, if I talk to 5 people, I'm not exaggerating, I probably close about 4 of those because I break it down.
That's strong.
I explain the process. I spend about 30 to 45 minutes with these guys, with these clients. And that's including a test spot. make the investment of, I personally like Milwaukee. I think you do too. I made the investment of wireless tools. I think it was like around $1,100 or $1,200 between tools and batteries and adapters and all that stuff. But what that allows me to do now is, for example, if I got a
Mm-hmm.
phone call like right now while I'm on the job and someone said, "Hey, can you come and quote my boat today?" And I have time to go and quote, I can pack up my little toolbox, put some compound and some sandpaper in there, go out to the job. These guys can keep working, keep busting their butt and doing a great job on the job. I can now go and quote that job without hooking up to my trailer and go and perform an actual test spot. And this does two things. One, this is going to set the standard, but now the customer knows what they're paying for. So when you do quote $4, $5, $10,000, depending on the boat size, obviously, and depending how cooked it is and how far
Yeah,
gone it
right.
is, you're able to get that job and show them like, I just spent an hour on a little box for a little box, an hour. Now imagine your whole boat for that same process. And 9 times out of 10, people don't have a problem with it
Mm-hmm.
because they're okay with like, okay, I get to see what I'm paying for. This is what my boat gets to look like. And then from there, guys, take deposits. Take a small 10% deposit. That's what I do. Hold their feet to the fire. They're asking you for you to take time out of your day to be placed on your schedule. Take a 10% deposit. Obviously, you have to give them a receipt. You guys can use. There's a lot of free processing squares out there, or free processing, stuff out there between Square, Stripe. Not to be sponsored or anything, but there's a couple free ones out there that you could use. I think QuickBooks has one as well. There are basic tools that you can do that, you type up an estimate, 10% of that number, you take a deposit, you give them a date on the spot. If you're like me, maybe you keep a pen and paper, a pad with you. I have two copies. I do pen and paper and a Google Calendar. That way, if for some reason a Google Calendar ever gets corrupted or if it gets messed up, I have a pen and paper. And you don't need to show them your book. You don't need to flip around a book and say, "All right, Mr. Customer, I have this dates available." You give them dates on your time that work. And if it doesn't work out, you then flip back the script and say, "Okay, how soon do you want to get this done?" I have a job, that same gentleman I told you about with the Robalo. I said to him, "Do you want to do it after or before Thanksgiving?" I could probably get done before, or I could do it after. Which one works best for you? Again, don't pressure these
Mm-hmm.
people, guys. You're not selling something that's like life or death. Some people it is, but majority of these guys are laxy daisy. They don't mind, waiting. Obviously, you're going to get that one customer every once in a while. It's like, I need it done yesterday. And if you do, you've got to tell them, well, unfortunately, if you're booked out like I am, tell them, unfortunately, I have other people in front of you, sir, with deposits. I can get this done to you after Thanksgiving or before. And this gentleman decided, hey, I want to get it done after Thanksgiving, and quite frankly, I'm 2 weeks into December right now. And that's a great feeling. I'm not having to worry about chasing the next job or having to lowball myself, which isn't fair to
Yep.
myself, or do a disservice to the customer and feel like I got to rush the job to do a proper way to do it, or to do the job in a short amount of time because I'm not being paid accordingly. So, but yeah,
So, what is your standard for getting back to the
right there
customer
on the
their
spot.
estimate?
Right
Because
there on the
there's
spot.
some out
There's
there.
no reason
Okay.
why. There's
Yeah.
no reason why, if you've
I
done what
mean,
I've said and you do it every single time, you cannot give them a price right there on the spot. Now, granted, obviously, let's say if it's a 62-foot Hatteras and the thing is absolutely cooked and you need a day or two, that's different. But if you're looking at a 30-foot Grady White and it needs, let's say
yeah.
you go in with a couple steps of rotary work and maybe a step or two of DA work, and then we seal it all up with ceramic, you should typically, if you know what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, you should be able to say, okay, this is what I've done for my business, and which has also helped me out on my price point. Is this is going to be realistically probably a 3-day project. This is day 2. This is going to be a 3-day project with 3 guys, top to bottom, with the steps that are needed. And that's whatever
Mm-hmm.
number it is that you need for that amount of work. That's kind of going to give you a baseline. So for me, I know how much I need to work or how much money I need to make per day to be profitable after payroll, because my guys are W-2, after payroll, after insurance, after my shop's rent, after ceramic, after material for compounds and waxes, or if we're not doing ceramic and polishes, and wool pads and foam pads and all the fun stuff. You should know there should be a number. There should be a number in your head, and if you haven't done these numbers,
Yeah.
you really should sit down and if you're a single owner operator, you should really sit down and think, okay, I need to make. I'm just going to use a number. I need to make $5,000 a week as an owner operator, right? That's $1,000 a day. Okay. So that tells me that you need to make minimum about between fuel, gas, expenses around that $1,300 to $1,400 mark, depending how much material you're making. So if you were to quote this boat, minimum, you should be around that $45 to $5,000 range. Make sense? I think it's super reasonable. I think it's super reasonable,
Yep.
super fair. You're doing honest work, and and you're gonna go from there. Now, some guys, obviously, if it needs wet sanding or dry.
All right. So Zach, man, we had a little interruption there. As you know,
Yeah,
like you're in the field.
unfortunately, yeah, phone
Your
overheated.
phone overheated. Anybody that
Yeah.
that owns a in the sun, in the heat, in Florida at that. For those of you listening, he is. I don't even think we really mentioned exactly where you're based out of in Port Charlotte, Florida. So
Yeah, Port
I
Charlotte,
mean,
Florida. Today we're
it,
working on the boat you saw behind me, which is now where my phone is suction cup to. We're in Punta Gorda to be in the shade. We're in Punta Gorda, Florida today, working at one of the local marinas.
yeah,
I can actually take this. We can go around. You can see you guys were on my truck right here.
yeah,
But it's a little local yard that's super really affordable that I found. I actually talked to the owner, Stacy, super nice lady, and the
nice.
staff here is awesome. Just to be accommodating for guys like me. I told her what I did, and she was like, "Yeah, we'll give you a little bit of a break on price if you can keep bringing people in here and make it affordable all the way around and make your life easier." Me personally, lift work is okay, but if you're, if not to go on the legality of things, but guys, if you're wet sanding boats or if you're sanding boats, you really shouldn't do that above the water.
Yeah.
And I personally don't like doing lift work, as you know, and as I mentioned, those Milwaukee tools, man, those things are not cheap,
Yeah, so
so
so that's where we kind of left off as you were talking about how you invested time and money into the cordless tools, and
yeah,
you're able to bring those tools on top of having sandpaper and compound to go out and perform a test spot on site for the customer,
yep,
right? And that efficiency there is giving you also the ability to quote in person, and you are a firm believer that quoting that same exact day is the key to success to be
yeah,
able
you
to
have
lock
to,
down
guys,
that actual
yes.
sale, right?
Yeah, yeah, you absolutely have to because if you don't, I mean, you know, you might as well not have showed up. You might as well not even showed up to the job.
Right.
It's
Do
it's
you
something
send like
that.
an email, or I mean, how do you present it generally?
So what I
'Cause
do, because
you talked about the laptop, right?
yeah, yeah.
And
So
then
I like Apple products. I think they're super efficient. So I
right.
have a MacBook, I have an iPad, I have an iPhone, that we're recording on this on.
Yep.
But I bring my MacBook and in the Numbers app, what I do is I then export that to a PDF.
Okay.
And then from there, I then export that PDF onto my iPhone and and I just say flat out, I'd say, "Hey, do you guys want me to text or email this PDF to you?" And now this does two things. The reason why I put it on my iPhone and I don't just leave it on my MacBook and I go directly from my MacBook to the client is because what if I don't have my MacBook with me?
Right.
What if I'm out and about and I left my MacBook at the shop and I'm on a job site like this, working on a boat, and I have a
And your
client that
phone
says, "Hey,"
overheats.
and my phone overheats. And when I have a client that calls me and says, "Hey
Yeah.
Zach, I have a couple questions about the quote." Am I supposed to say, I don't have my laptop with me, I can't talk to you?
Hmm.
No,
It's
it's on
not
my phone.
professional.
No, it's not professional. It's on my phone. It's all in our text or an email. But typically, what I will do is I'll text it over to them anyway because most people have an iPhone, or even an Android. You can still open up a PDF file, no problem. It allows us to have clear communication. Expectations are met. There's no
Right.
discrepancy in the price because you've now gone and looked at the boat. So you now know what you're going to work.
Right.
Obviously, if you quote a boat a year ago and they call you, that you gotta set the standard. You gotta set the expectations. Like, guys, it's been a year ago. I need to meet with you again. It's probably, and you just set the expectations. It might be a little bit more.
Yeah.
Might be a little bit more money. And that's okay. Like I have a gentleman who, I talked to in the beginning of this year on another Grady White. Where that's there's a local Grady White dealer in this town.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so there's a lot of Grady Whites, and we work on those a lot. But I quoted him in January. He said that's great, I like it, but I'm gonna wait until December because that's when I'm gonna really be back. I'm leaving. I
Hmm.
have some family stuff I have to attend to. We're not going to be back until November, till the end of November. I want to get on your schedule for the either beginning of the year or the middle of December to have this done so I can use the boat. And I told him flat out, okay, it's probably going to be more money, if you wait, because the boat was super oxidized. Like I'm talking, you touch it and your boat's blue, your hand's blue now because it's that oxidized.
Hmm.
So and that's it. You have to set proper expectations. You're the professional. This is why they are having you guys out here. This is why they're asking for your professional opinion. Again, it just goes back to confidence. Have a smile. Say, yes,
Yeah.
sir, it's going to be $6,000. And you have a big smile on your face. Yes, sir, it's
Yeah.
going to be 3 grand to restore your
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
foot
And
center
you got to
console.
be confident in what you're selling, man. I
Yeah.
mean, and,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, everyone out there, you're really selling yourself too. Like if
100%.
you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself and you wouldn't buy from you, like you need to change that. You
Yes.
know,
100. I agree.
you,
Wholeheartedly agree. That's
you
a
got to
great
change that,
mindset
and
to
that
have.
and that goes back to at the beginning what you were saying is making sure you're clean cut, professional when
Yeah.
you're having those conversations. And communication. Like I think the whole
That's
thing that
key.
we're getting from this is your communication skills to the expectations of your customers are
Yeah.
very cut and clear, which is what's
Yeah.
leading to your success, right? And then when you're giving them a promise, you stand on that promise. And if you can't, you communicate it before it's too late. And you brought up a good, valid point earlier that I think gets overlooked too is that you're going to be late probably an hour before you get there. You don't know that you're going to be late 5 minutes before you get there to be an hour late. So,
Correct.
you have to. So, what we call that is keeping the customer informed. As
Yeah. In
long
the
as you
know.
keep
In the
in the
know.
know, man, if you keep them
Yeah.
informed, you can be an hour late and not be a big deal. If you let them
Hmm.
know
Yeah.
45 an hour ahead of time, you're going to be an hour late for your appointment. But if you tell them 10 or 5 or 10 minutes before the appointment time that you're going to be an hour late, that's a concern. That's
It
an
is
issue.
concerning. It is concerning. It's kind of like, for me, I mean, I never stop, as you know. I never stop, but
Yeah.
it is just one of those things like, guys, if you're a business owner, if you really want to do this full time and you really want to be successful and you want to have nice things or
Yeah.
be able to grow to the point to where you have a team and have people help you, because this is super hard work, with
Right.
with boats. This is super strenuous. You got to take this seriously.
Right.
You got to commit. For me, I wake up at 5 every day. Not saying you got to wake up at 5 every day, but I wake up at 5 every day.
Early bird gets
I
a
get,
worm. Isn't that what
yeah,
you say all the time?
early bird gets the, yep, yeah, as you know,
Yeah.
my Instagram post, yeah, early bird gets the worm, and obviously you got to find balance. I love chaos, so I'm a little bit in that chaotic, like I'm always go
Controlled
go go.
chaos.
Yeah, exactly, controlled chaos,
Mm.
dude. I love getting 6 to 8 phone calls a day for customers, or being able to even say that is a blessing. Being
Yeah.
able to be busy is a privilege. Being able to have the amount of work is a privilege. To be able to be exhausted is also a privilege.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just me that does the work.
Rather
I
be too
have.
busy than not busy enough, man.
Correct. Yeah, and it's not just me though that's doing all the physical work. There's I got my two guys, that are crushing it, knocking it out. But there's a lot of mental stuff that goes into this too. You got to have a positive attitude. You got to be like, I can't wait to go work on this boat. You can't be like, screw this, man. I got to go work on this oxidized 30-foot Grady White, or I got to go
Yeah,
work
because
on
when you have
whatever it
that
is.
conversation with the customer, they can sense that attitude, man.
Oh, absolutely. And when
Yeah.
you're positive about it, every job is an opportunity to not only have have a client, but to build a relationship, because you don't know where those doors are going to go to. I've had one guy that was a $400 basic wash on a boat turn
Mm.
into a massive ceramic coating job on a 42-foot Freeman. If anyone knows boats, that's a nice boat. That's
Yeah,
a really, really nice boat. And
that's a great ticket right there. And I tell you
yeah,
what, so attitude. I bet you may not know this. So I think everybody's familiar with a brand called Disney, right? So you ever been to Disneyland or anything like that? Just so
they're
you
always
know,
happy. They're always happy.
so they are, and they're happy
Yeah.
for a reason. So if you get on the crew bus to go to work and you have a bad attitude, you're not smiling, they will not let you go to work. It is so important for that company to have a happy experience for everybody that comes
Sure.
there,
Well,
right?
another
So,
thing that's really important is just like, and to kind of add on to that,
mhm.
is just your work environment. having a
Yes.
positive attitude, the people that you surround yourself with, not only as a business owner, but as a person, and your people that help you do the job. Some of these, I know some guys have just like a helper or something like that. Maybe it's just
Right.
two guys out of a van
Hmm.
or a shop or whatever the case is. Having that right person that you surround yourself with. In my case, I have two guys that work alongside me.
Hmm.
They're always positive. They're always, first thing, when you get to the shop, once everyone's settled in, the first 10 minutes is like, all right, what are we doing? Keeping them in the know. And that kind of, you feed off each other. You bounce
Right.
it back and forth.
Hmm.
And that's such a huge, huge, huge thing to have, because after work now, right now that you're done working, let's say you stop at 5. Now it's that 5 o'clock to midnight, or if you're like me, you're up until 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out how to continue to make things happen.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to respond to people at 1 in the morning. Don't do that. But just making sure, okay, your checklist. So when you wake up and it's 8 o'clock in the morning the next day, oh, okay, I'm organized. I know I got to respond to this guy, this girl, whatever it is that you have going on. That way, the
Hmm.
flow it continues. And is every day perfect? No, I wish it was.
Never. Yep.
I wish it was. But if you can again have some type of controlled chaos, the rest will follow. The rest, those building blocks to be able to be like, okay, I have a team, I have a full-time staff, I have guys that have families that work with me, right? I don't like to say for me, that work with me because I'm in there with them. That work
Yep.
with me, it's a bit you got, that work with me. My job for them now, part of it is I gotta provide for them and their family. If I
Right.
can't do that, I have failed them as a business owner and as a
Yep.
boss and as
Yep.
as a as a person that they're supposed to rely on. Oh,
Very great points.
it's
It's not
just
just about you, man. You got other people that you got to
correct,
count on, man.
correct,
you know,
correct.
or the other people that count on you, should I say? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, all right. So I always ask this generally in every podcast. I'm sure you've listened to a few of them.
Mhm.
So if you had only 5 pads that you could ever use as a marine detailer, what pads are you going to choose? Only
Definitely,
5.
obviously, double-sided white wool. I love my
Okay.
double-sided. Definitely the money pad.
You okay?
Can't forget that. Purple haze. If you guys haven't tried that,
People
definitely,
are
definitely,
sleeping
definitely
on
try
that
that.
one, man. Just so you
They
know,
are
there's a lot
that.
out there sleeping on it
Hey,
that
listen,
haven't tried it. There is
I'm
a
just
difference.
saying, try that with Blaze on a boat that's not oxidized, and you want a nice, maybe someone that's on a budget that you want to have a nice finish, and it's able to really cut and have a nice finish. Try
Mm,
that. That's a great combo. Definitely orange foam.
yep.
Definitely orange foam. Um,
You got
and
one
I'm
more,
I'm
man.
I'm gonna say I like my black foam, my nice black soft foam. That works really
Yep.
well on Mercury cowlings. Yeah, I like that to finish off on. That works really, really well. And same thing on some of the painted surfaces on boats.
Yep.
So
Yep. No yellow wool.
I mean, I like yellow wool, but you sometimes you can get away with not having to do yellow wool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No.
so
Touche. Touche.
sometimes you
Touche.
sometimes you can go from white wool rotary to a purple haze pad on a
Yeah.
DA. And
Yeah. The
again,
cut and the
because
finish
of
that it gives you is pretty solid.
yeah, and me personally, I don't mind rotary work, but again, when you have people who maybe aren't as efficient with the rotary and they like the DA, and everyone runs their operations differently. Maybe if you're a solo operator that you like to use the rotary and you can go from white wool to yellow wool and then to a finishing pad and then
Hmm.
seal it. You can definitely you can definitely do it. I mean, there's 9 different ways to skin a cat.
There
I just
is.
have found for my process and my guys, I like to go from white wool to typically, a purple haze pad. It's just, obviously every gel coat's different, but that's for the
Right.
most part that seems to work pretty, pretty well for me.
Right.
So
So where do you see the industry, a marine detailer, the industry as a whole, in the next 5 or 10 years? What do you see, or what would you like to see?
what I would like to see is more guys as professionals, more informed.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more people. Obviously, it's not a perfect world. You're always going to have people that are starting out that are new that just don't know. But guys, just kind of educating yourselves, taking the class, you know, going through and maybe it's just a YouTube video, but finding out there's tons of free information out there
Yeah.
that, not only that you guys put out for Marine Detail Supply and Stark Yacht Care,
Yep.
but There's a lot of good YouTube videos out there. There's a lot of information that is literally free, and just spending that time. A lot of guys like to go in, and unfortunately in my area, where, they just take a white wool rotary pad and heavy
Oof.
cut. And I'm not going to say
Good old
pads
cleaner
or
wax, right?
compounds. Yeah, and that's it, and they just go on and finish it. And then the customer calls me a month later. I mean, I just had this happen like three-ish weeks ago on an aquasport, a
Hmm.
225 aquasport. The guy literally had it done at a marina, called me and said, "Hey man, I was at the sandbar with my buddies, and my buddy literally slapped my chest like this and said, 'Dude, what's up with your boat?'" And there's
Oh,
just a
wow,
bunch of a
really?
bunch of bunch of swirls, and he called me and said, what happened?" And I instantly knew. I took a water bottle, and I did this, and it was flat. There wasn't any beating, and it was
Yeah.
just
No
it was just
protection.
super, no protection. It just swirled up, and I asked the guy, I said, "What did you pay for this?" And he said, "I paid $1,700 to have this done."
Wow.
And so this guy, a month and roughly, whatever it was, recently had that done, spent $1,700 with someone. And he said, yeah, they did it in like 6 hours, on a boat. At this point, yeah, you're making, well over $200 an hour.
Yeah, but you're
But now,
cheating the customer
but
that
now
way.
you're, but now
You're
you're
cheating the
cheating the
customer.
customer. But now you're
Yeah.
cheating the customer, and that goes back to, it's like, man, if you did it the right way, that one customer. How I look at it is this, right? You do one good job that turns into possibly 10 clients, right? But unfortunately, in this situation, it's the other end. So now it's turned into one bad guy, one bad client, or one client that you did a bad job for. Sorry, let me
You're going to lose
rephrase
out
that.
on 10 good clients.
You lose on 10 good clients. And
Yeah.
so if you're struggling, right, or if you're having a hard time, not saying you're doing a bad job, but maybe sit back and look at your process. What are you doing? Are you cutting corners? Are you maybe afraid to charge accordingly? Like, guys, you're the professional. This is why they're calling you. They don't want to do it themselves. And if they do decide to do it themselves, funny story, it's how I met my best friend. He had a beaver tail, quoted him 2 grand to do it. It took him 3 weeks to do it. 3 weekends to do a beaver tail, 18-foot skiff. He went out and spent $1,000. He went and down to Fort Myers, and he asked me. He said flat out, "How can I do this? What do I need to buy?" He went and spent $1,000 between pads, tools, compounds. Spent 3 weekends on it, so 6 days total. This guy's jacked, a bodybuilder. My best friend Jesse, absolutely
Right.
just yoked. Right, makes me
Good
look
shape.
super tiny. Right. He said, and he's got that white shell gravel driveway, like the shell,
Hmm.
and he did it. And
Hmm.
he's on his knees, just like what I got now. He's
Man,
on his knees trying to buff on it, and he's like, and he called me when he was done, and he talked to me the whole time. What he was doing, asking me questions. I walked him through it, and he says to me, he's like, "Bro, I don't know how you do this every day. My knees look like hamburger meat." And I just, and from there, we ended up talking a little bit more, and we ended up having that's literally my best friend now. And it's just
what a
hilarious
story.
though. It's just hilarious though now, just to see, like, as a business owner, like, this guy went and spent $1,000 on all these pads and compounds when he could have paid me 2 grand, $1,000 more to have it done right. And you're not saying he did it
Not
wrong,
killed
but
himself for three
to not have
weeks.
killed himself for 3 weeks, like, and this is what you guys have to tell these clients, or maybe ask them flat out, what's your time worth? If you ever get a little bit of pushback, guys, this is why they're hiring you. You're the professional. You're supposed to be in the know to get the job done right, and they're
Yep.
trusting you. So what I want to end off that part is get paid accordingly for it. Not saying you got to rip them off, but don't be afraid to ask for the business. And if you do everything that I mentioned today in your process and in your steps of, like, from the beginning of, okay, I met John Smith, I related to John Smith, I assessed the boat, I processed the boat, I typed up a quote. You typed up the quote in front of them, have a conversation with them. And sometimes they understand, if it's a larger
Yep.
boat, maybe they're quiet, and you're talking to them not as much. And then present the quote, walk them through it, and then close them. And then you say, because I like to do this. I like to give them basic wax or polymer. I like to give them a graphene sealant, and then ceramic. Right? You give them three options. You say which at the end of the number, you know, wax is this, graphene is this, ceramic is this. You have your level one, level two, level three. You say what option, now that I've gone over everything with you. The process to get the boat right is all the same. It's just a matter of what type of level of protection do you want to put on your boat? And that's the only difference that should be in the quote. What kind of protection, difference in protection do you want to put on your boat? what option works best for you, Mr. Customer? And then you shut up.
Yeah, you got to
You're
ask.
quiet.
First one to talk loses, man.
First one to talk loses, and then you're quiet. I can't tell you, how many times when I sold cars where, you know, you present the numbers and you're just quiet. You're just looking at each other for 10 minutes like this. You're just looking at just a smile. And there's nothing wrong. And sometimes people will ask for a discount. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. And obviously, depending, because you should know your business, you should know where you stand on that quote. If you can, you know, like for reference, don't lose the business. Don't lose, if you're at 5,000 and they say, can you do it for $4,800 or 4,750? Not saying you have to go down to that number, but don't lose the business over a couple $100. If
That
you know
doesn't
your
mean do
numbers,
it for 2 grand, though.
don't do it for 2 grand, but
Yeah.
but get paid for it, charge accordingly
Yeah.
for it, and if you can, there's always some wiggle room. We're not some big conglomerate, I'm not certainly. So I know if someone asks for maybe $100 or two off, like I said, I have two guys I got to make sure I have work for,
Yeah.
plus myself, and I have a shop to pay for. So I'm gonna budge a little bit if I can, if I know I can, and that's another thing is being consistent. You know, that one customer that you do that for, that might lead to 5 or 10 other jobs.
Yeah.
That guy I mentioned with that 42 Freeman, that guy sends me probably one or two boats a month. Seriously, no joke. That's a charter captain who knows a
Yeah.
lot of people. Again, these are doors that, again, guys, going back to networking, doing a good job, but going back to networking where if you can get in with certain circles and groups, that you become their guy all of a sudden.
Yep.
And then at that point, you don't need to spend money on ads. I mean, if you
Yep.
want to be drowning and you want to have a staff of 10 guys, then yes, you'll have to do some type of advertising. But if you're a single owner operator that maybe has one guy full time that works with you that you provide for, there should be no reason why you should have to run through an ad agency spending 2 or 3 grand a month. That's just silly.
Yep.
That doesn't make
Yep.
sense. So,
Yep. Yep.
so
Now, some really good points, Zach. And for those that are listening that want to find you, how do they find you on social media?
add me on Facebook. I don't mind doing that. Full name Zachary, last name Ranger, like the truck. You guys see the business, SWFL, Marine and Auto Detailing. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. If you want to, talk on the phone, shoot me a text. I'll respect your time as much as you respect mine. You know what I mean? I don't mind, talking to you guys and giving a little bit of information and feedback to you guys. I will say, there are a couple local guys, in my opinion, that I've talked to that have helped me get to where I am today. Do I know everything? God, no. But I think I know the basics and, or at least, majority of the basics to get to help someone that maybe is struggling to help get them to where they were not struggling. Maybe we're at the point now where they are 2 weeks out consistently or 3 weeks out. Well, that'd be a great, great standpoint that maybe someone is only 4 or 5 days out worth of work to where they can get to say, hey, I don't have to worry about how I'm going to pay my electric bill next month or this
Yeah.
coming month,
Right.
so because that's the goal, right? Anyone that's doing this professionally, you want to have a successful business and be able to be like, all right, I got money in the bank. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, able to provide a great service and be a local guy in my area that does a good job, and the rest will follow. Everything else is going to follow. So those are the simple tools to the success.
Well, Zach, man, really appreciate you sharing a lot of valuable information for a
Sure.
lot of struggling businesses out there and very successful businesses that can actually take some tips from you too, and I think really help grow their business overall. So again,
Yeah.
we appreciate you guys being on. Those of you out there that
Worse.
are
Appreciate you guys
listening,
having me on.
yeah, absolutely. Make sure you check us out. You can listen on Spotify. You can check it out on YouTube. And then if you're ever in the need for any compounds, polishes, machines, check out your nearest marine detail supply near you.